I'm doing fantastic. Lucky to be first in-person podcast episode here. So.
Yeah. I'm stoked.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is our first in-person podcast. Really excited about this. Pretty nervous as well. No reason to be.
Nope.
Anyways, this is my boss and my friend Dave at District Bicycle Company in Kamloops. Dave, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Dave McInnes. As Nolan said, I'm one of the owners of District Bicycle Company here in town. Nolan's been an employee of mine now for, I guess, a couple months?
Yeah.
Yes, as he's doing school here. And yeah, basically bike shops and mountain bike industry is basically all I've done for the last, 25 years of my life or so. Maybe a little bit less than that, maybe 20 years. Primarily a mechanic, focus on service and racing and those types of things, but also love to ride myself, love to get out. And born in Edmonton, spent a large chunk of my life in North Vancouver riding, kind of cutting my teeth on the whole thing there, and then moved to Kamloops in 2019. So we'll get into the details of the journey as we go.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, a big part of this podcast, at least for me, is trying to figure out what the hell I want to do and where the hell I want to put my energy in this world. And that's my first question for you, Dave. So after high school, or even during high school, I guess I just say after high school because I wasn't really driven towards anything in high school.
Yep.
I don't know about you, but where did you direct your energy? Where did you direct your energy when you first felt the drive to actually do something with your life?
Yeah, I mean, that's like a really interesting question, actually, because for me, I was always a hockey kid growing up in Edmonton, Northern Alberta. That was like all I ever, did. That was kind of like, not that my dream was to make it to the NHL. Well, every kid's dream is to make it to the NHL, but not that was like a valid, dream, but it was like, that was kind of all I did for a long time. That's kind of where a lot of my energy went, even through high school. Things kind of came to an end on that path with a really bad car accident I was in grade 11, and that kind of derailed the whole hockey thing. I still played for a little bit, a few years after that, but it kind of took the idea that I was going to play until I was no longer good enough to make the next team, or it kind of took that idea and pushed it to the side. And I kind of floated around for a while outside of high school, not really knowing what I wanted to do, to be quite honest. And it actually took me until I was in university, kind of. My parents were like, you have to go to post-secondary. I wanted to take some time off. They weren't really into that. They were kind of like, if you don't go, then you're never going to go back, and blah blah blah. We've now come to a consensus that probably wasn't true, but it was what it was at the time. They were doing their best, and it took me basically floating around, not doing a whole hell of a lot, working, trying to find a career. And one of my best friends who was actually in the car accident with me was already really into riding with another one of his really good friends. And I was just hanging out with them all the time. We were always watching mountain bike movies and looking. I was like, man, that's so cool. And you guys do it. And then, who's now one of my best friends, Andrew Baker, one day was just like, let's go for a ride. I have a spare bike. Let's go proceeded to go for a ride with them, tore off a XTR derailleur, brand new, first ride, and cost them a bunch of money. And, and then from there, it was kind of honest to God, it was I just didn't look back from that step. It was the first thing that had given me direction since hockey, was finding that sport that had, I think, some of the physical consequences that I liked. It had some of the athleticism that I liked, from hockey. It had a lot of for me at that time, it had a lot of team aspect to it, because I had these two really close friends that all we would do is go ride together. So at that point, it wasn't really a career. It wasn't okay, I'm going to own bike shops or anything. It was just for the first time, instead of just waking up and kind of messing around and fapping about all day, it was I'm waking up to go ride. And then I actually got the motivation to finish university, to do all that stuff, because I had found this passion. So that was kind of it took me a little while to direct that energy. For sure, to find a focus. So I think there's a lot of people that are really pressured to find a focus early, in high school. Or what are you going to be?
Of course.
It's how are you going to know?
Yeah, I was almost like a little rebellious toward that pressure in high school. I was like, fuck you, I don't want to go to college.
Totally. And like, how am I supposed to know what I want?
You tell me what to do.
Totally. How are you supposed to tell me like that now I'm supposed to, like you're saying I'm too young on one hand to like drink or to, you know, whatever, but at the same time I'm old enough to like decide what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like, it just seems kind of crazy.
Sign yourself up to, what's scary about college to me is that if you invest money in it first year, maybe second year, and then maybe second year you feel like you don't want to do it anymore, then it feels like a waste of the investment.
Totally.
And
it's interesting. I mean, and I went through that. Like, it took me 7 years to finish a 4-year degree, partially because I went part-time for some of those years, partially because I switched programs twice. Like, I started in business, then I went to phys ed, and then I finally just ended up getting an arts degree where I studied philosophy and history as my majors just because I loved them. Like, it was awesome. Yeah. But, you know, is it quote unquote helpful as a degree now? Like, it is, because I think learning is helpful. I think discussing is helpful. I think researching is helpful. I think all that stuff. But like, there's a lot of people that view that degree as a useless degree, right? Like, you know, a lot of people are like,
a lot of people that think of that.
Yeah, how do you make money as an arts degree, right? Like,
a good friend of mine actually got
a
degree in philosophy.
Yeah, and what are you gonna do with it? I mean, other than philosophize. So
but he's a really smart kid, and I love talking to him.
Yeah. And I think if we all had like a little bit more of that, like learning for the sake of learning, especially when we were younger, we'd be better at what we choose to do later.
Yeah. It's like, it's special when it happens, but when you really find out what makes you, like, what gets you excited about the learning.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. When I think about that now, like, I constantly play with the idea of going back to school, and what I would go back to school for now is like so different than what I kind of even would have imagined then. And I know that I now have the motivation that it's like, if I make that decision to go back and jump in fully into it, and like for a lot of those kind of years, like I try to not regret, you know, much in my life, but there is a part of me that feels like they were a little bit wasted, right? Like, I could have done something else. Yeah. So, but yeah, so that's kind of what took me through like high school and post-secondary, and started me on the road that I'm on now. Yeah,
it's kind of funny that you say that mountain biking, not funny, but cool.
Yeah.
That mountain biking gave you direction, because I skated a lot in high school, and I don't really care about much.
Yep.
I'm not saying that all skaters don't care about much, but as a skater, I felt like that I identified with not caring about much. And then I started mountain biking with my brother and his friends, and they're all older than me, and they had some direction in their lives.
Totally.
And they were always getting up early to go ride some bikes some cool places, or go dig.
Yeah.
Because digging's hard, and it's not super fun when you drink a bunch and then you kind of wake up and go dig.
That's true.
And it just like put me on the righteous path a little bit, just the amount that I needed to move to Montana.
Yeah, which is also cool, right? Like, then you take this huge pace of growth for you that like not only gives like direction there, but it's like, then it all of a sudden is a spur that moves you away from your family, that then now has also brought you here, which is
I moved to Kamloops because you got this for free ride started.
Yeah, and so it's like, think about all that journey that's sparked by this like little thing, right? It's, like,
it's wild.
Yeah, it is wild. You know, and I think the mountain biking is such a good thing because, well, for me it was, because I very much like you identified, through a lot of kind of stuff in those first years of university and end of high school. There's a lot of stuff going on in my life that very strongly put me in this like hedonistic, live for the moment mindset all the time, which I think is fantastic, and I think everyone needs to embrace it a little bit.
So fun.
But I was at a point where it was like, I was just spinning wheels. I was actually really miserable, even though I had fought tooth and nail for my right to just have fun every day. And then like mountain biking, though, still let me do that. Like, it still let me party. It still let me like go have fun and smoke joints in the woods with my buddies and like, you know, do all those things. But started to like coalesce that like hard work and passion needed to be a part of whatever I was going to do. And it wasn't like it was overnight. I went from like a trouble, you know what I mean, to like, oh cool, now I'm this. But it started giving me like the forces that I would need to like, not just like to shape me in a way that I could accept, right? Like you were saying, it's like if someone just came to me and said like, you're going to have to change this about your life, you're going to have to change this about your life, I would have been like, like not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. So that was kind of like, it's interesting that plays a similar role for so many people.
It's
just cool.
It's cool. So you eventually became a World Cup mechanic.
Yeah, like an EWS mechanic for the Enduro World Series was like the full title, for that job role. I was really lucky to work with a bunch of other teams developing, World Cup bikes and developing racers through the BC Cups and Canada Cup programs to race World Cups, which was incredible. And then working with a lot of the same people, racing at like some of the highest levels, across the globe, which has been incredible.
How do you get into that?
Yeah, I mean, it all
from like getting into mountain biking.
Yeah, it all started like
seems like
well,
a hype dream to me.
Again, it was a weird journey, man. Like, I said like, it got me this motivation to actually finish university, and what got me that motivation was like, okay, I need to move to North Van. But I was already so far into this university journey that I was like, I can't just leave because then I'm really wasting, everything. So I was like, okay, I got to finish this degree. So I got this degree done, and then right away I moved to North Vancouver in like January of that year. Like I finished in December, moved in January, and I'd already had a couple friends that Baker, the guy that gave me my first bike to go ride, he had already. We always joke he'd never really moved there. He was driving there to do a flow show with Dangerous Dan Cowan at the time. His car broke down that he bought from my mom and drove into the ground, and he just never moved back. He just like got there, left all his shit in Edmonton, and just now lived in North Van. So I was like, well, I'll go meet him. And so I moved out there. I was working with Mountain Equipment Co-op at the time. They were able to transfer me to a North Vancouver store there. So I was like, okay, I have a job, kind of out there. Moved out just to ride. Like that was it, right? That was no bigger goal at that time. It was like to go ride my bike where it's all happening. Mm-hmm. And spent a few years there, and in my second year there at Mountain Equipment Co-op, decided to get into bikes, and I took a job there as like their first master mechanic, kind of on like a prayer. Like I barely worked in bike shops at that point. I had done a lot of work myself on my bikes and done a lot of work for my team. I had ridden the flow show with Baker and LJ for a summer. I had been lucky enough to already work with some like really talented riders at Edmonton, Grant Laird, Jeff Bryson, like some people that are really. So we did a lot of work on bikes, but not in this like environment. And then
the flow show is like an enduro team.
The flow show was the flow show was anyone that's like my age, 40 plus, will remember the flow show out there. You should go try to find some footage of it. Dangerous Dan Cowan's flow show. Okay. It was like literally a carnival show. I was like a carny for a summer. You'd travel around this big lifted van. We'd set up all our stunts at all these little fairs, like Klondike Days in Edmonton or the Stampede in Calgary or whatever, at all these little events. And so we had everything from like these kicker jumps to like these big skinnies way off the deck.
Oh, cool.
It was just this bike show. The whole idea was to try to find this flow state of riding, and to show what was possible and to show that this stuff could be ridden with like smoothness and whatever. And we would just travel around all these little towns and ride that, and it was awesome. So that was like the first experience with. There probably is some. I mean, this was before like YouTube was a thing, really. But there probably is
find like an internet link or anything.
Yeah,
put it in the description.
There probably is some footage out there. I'm sure Baker has some. Dan just posted a picture the other day of like when it was first starting, the flow show way back when.
Oh, cool.
And Dan was a huge trail builder on the North Shore. So I'd known about him from watching all those movies when I was first getting into it. It's part of why I wanted to move there. And then I'd been lucky enough to ride with him. And then so I took this job with NEC and wrenched with them and still just knew these people. And then I moved from that position to a local shop because I wanted more experience at like a smaller shop kind of level. And through this whole time, I was working with some really good friends of mine again, Baker and Grant Laird and Jeff Bryson Grant and Jeff were already really big into racing at the Canada Cup and BC Cup levels. And so then I started hanging out with them. Then I started racing, and then I started wrenching for them, for their team. I learned from this other mechanic, Buckwheat, who was kind of the race team mechanic. Then he moved to Saskatchewan, so I took over that role. And that got me into all sorts of really cool places. That got me into like, doing prototype testing and stuff testing with Specialized, with Rocky Mountain, with developing bikes with, through that team, which was the Bryson Racing Clan at the time. And and then it was just like, wanted to start my own shop and started that, and then just tried to balance that with the opportunities to get to go, travel and wrench. At that time, probably my fastest racer I was working with consistently was this guy by the name of Adriano. Still a good friend of mine today, still one of the fastest people I've ever seen on a bike. And I worked with him a lot over the next couple of years, just figuring out tips and tricks and what makes people faster. And then, I was able to transition that into a job, moving around the world for a season and wrenching and working, and then back into the bike shop game here. So, that's kind of the synopsis.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So none of it was planned though. Like I think that's the big thing, right? Like if anyone was interested in trying to do something like that, it all started just because I loved riding my bike. And then I was like, I can't afford to fix my bike, so I better learn how to fix it, especially if I'm going to race it. So then it was like, okay, get a job in a bike shop, learn, surround myself by these people that already knew at the highest level, like what was going on, continue to learn with them, soak everything in, don't have an opinion until you've done enough and seen enough to not earn an opinion, but to form an opinion that's valid. Then start being confident in that. Like, and then that's what gave you the idea to then be like, okay, I'm going to start my own shop. I think we can do service better. Okay, I am going to apply for this position to be a mechanic because I think I can help this team. I can, and that stuff all just kind of came naturally as a byproduct of like just wanting to be immersed, in mountain biking in any way that I could.
Yeah, it's really cool transition period to start from a learner's perspective, and then one day maybe you're thinking, oh, I can actually give the teacher some tricks and how I can do it better.
Well,
we can do it better.
It was super cool because I had that like experience going on, and then totally concurrently to that, I was also working with all these like really incredible free riders out of North Van, right? I was working with Jeff Gulvich, Jordy Lund. I was working with Wade Simmons. I was working with Brett Tippy, who's still one of my best friends today. And when Brett like first came to me and was looking for someone to build his bikes and do this stuff, and it was like, so I was able to like really see these two sides of mountain biking, like this, like really high performance, willing to sacrifice, potentially some durability things, or like what are the ways that I can make this bike run as fast as humanly possible. And then also kind of flipping to this other side where it was like, these guys are going to be jumping off the biggest stuff they can find, smashing their things hard. Some of them were working in scenarios where it's like if you're traveling for an event, like they're not going to have all this spare stuff with them. So you're now trying to focus on like, how do I make it as strong as it can be? How do I make sure that it's like as fail proof as it can be? How do I work with the riders to know that they can trust that they can pick up their bike from me the night before they fly out, and when they put it together, it's going to feel exactly like it would if we were here. And so I got to do like, both of those things. And I think that the distinction is like, seems small, but it's actually really big in terms of like the knowledge that it has to give you, and how do you, make things work for different people and what their goals are. And I just got, really, really lucky that a lot of these people, gave me a chance, and especially when I was first starting out in my service only shop, and I remember like being like, I can do this better than it's being done. And then, the first like couple days, it's like tumbleweeds, and you're just like, fuck, like what have I done? Because at that time, no one had done a service only shop at all in Canada, as far as I know. Definitely not in North Van. And I was like, I was just like, I think service can be the most important thing. Like, I don't think we need to sell a bunch of other stuff necessarily. And then I got really lucky that, I put a lot of time and effort into doing it right. And then word got around, and then I had a lot of people buy into that program, right? And be like, the money's worth it if we're getting the job run right. And then I got to learn with some of the best riders on the planet, which was incredible, and I can't thank. There's way too many people to list on who I got to work with, but I've been able to, really lucky to work with some pretty fun people. So,
wow.
And then mostly party with them and have a really good time. And the rest of it. Cool. So,
because most riders, if they're sponsored, they're already getting their parts and their apparel from other, like, their brands that they're working with, right? So they really just need literally a service only shop.
Well, I think it just hit the bill for a lot of people too, because it was like they could even still promote the shop in a way that they couldn't with other shops, because let's say this brand was working with shop X, but that clothing, like they didn't carry that clothing. So now this rider's like, okay, I can go there, but it's hard for me to also, like, I want to promote that shop. They're building my bike, but it's hard because they're not carrying like these other products that I have. And because I was just like brand, like it didn't matter. I wasn't carrying any bikes. I wasn't carrying any clothes. I wasn't carrying any helmets. Like I could just be very like, this is all I'm doing. And so it was easy to partner,
highly specialized.
Totally. And then it was also easy for like Joe Blow Public to come by and trust an opinion, because they're like, you don't have any skin in the game. So like, what do you think the best value bike is for me this year? What do you think the best parts are? What do you think for what I do? Like, what drivetrain do I want? It's like, I can now give you my totally God honest opinion because I don't have any skin in the game. Like I'm not stocking X, Y, or Z that I have to sell to pay bills. And that's not knocking shops. I'm in that position now. Like, you know, it is what it is. We're all trying to like, you're trying to make it work. You try to stock the products you believe in. You try to stock the stuff that you know, but products, as we all know, have some ups and downs, have some bad years, some good years. And like, there's times where you get stuck with stuff that you're like, man, like I do need to try to move this product. And like, you know, how do you move that in a way that feels good? I probably get rid of more product than I should here when I'm like, man, I don't think this is worth selling. You know, unfortunately, it sucks. It's like I just have to take that hit as a business owner, which I didn't have to do then. Like I just removed that whole side of things and I could just focus on doing what I loved, which was rad. So yeah, it was a really easy and cool transition to do.
Why did you decide to switch from a service only shop to a more holistic, classic example of a bike shop?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a whole bunch of things that had started there. Like, part of it was because I'd made the decision to to move from North Van for all sorts of different life reasons. My partner and I at the time were looking for a change. We were looking for a bigger place to live. We simply like couldn't afford what housing prices were doing in North Van. And we found a big property outside of Kamloops that we wanted to do. I've always been really interested in this like off-grid living type thing, and which was super rad. And so we found this place, and we were gonna make it move, and we made the move. And part of that move though wouldn't have happened if I couldn't have been able to get like to work with Dustin Adams at We Are One in Kamloops here. Oh, yeah. And so I had known Dustin from filming a few projects with him with Tippy and stuff in the past, and we kind of like had a working relationship. I was building We Are One wheels already, like they were sending them to the shop, and you know, I was working with him there. So I had reached out to him to be like, hey, if I make this move, like, would I be able to come work, you know, for you guys? And I was able to do that. And that was what ended up channeling then to kind of like working through the EWS teams and working with their development team, product testing before they launched the Arrival, you know, over in Europe and racing it and try to get feedback on that bike and try to get it up and running. And so that was a great process. But then when I had the opportunity to get like back into, I realized how much I missed just interacting like with the public and how much I missed being on that front line. And at the time there was an opportunity to buy into District, you know, bikes.
Okay.
So then there was like,
so you didn't start this?
Nope. No. So I bought into District Bikes with John Osborne, you know, 2 and a bit years ago now, I guess.
Nice.
Yeah. Or 2 years coming up right away here. And, it was also really serendipitous. Like, I don't know if I would have done it or if I would have kind of started my own service thing, but for some other factors that were really interesting, like I'd always loved Vail Mount. Vail Mount was the place that I originally thought I was going to try to move and live off grid. And like, I just loved the mountains there. I loved everything about it. And I used to go from Bicycle Hub, my first shop, up to Vail Mount in the spring. And I would like talk to my contact there, and he would get everyone's repairs together that needed to be done, and I'd buy all the parts, and I'd head up there, and I would go work on bikes for a little while because they didn't have a bike shop, and it's a really small town. And so then, while I was doing all my other stuff, District had already opened, and then District opened a shop in Vail Mount. And so then when I had the opportunity to buy into District, like there was already a shop there. Like it just felt like very serendipitous. It just was like all of these pieces of the puzzle that I've looked for like all these years were kind of just lining up. And so it became a no-brainer for me at that point to buy in and now things are awesome.
Solid.
So yeah.
So you made that all sound somewhat seamless.
Well, definitely had some ups and downs.
I was wanting to ask about that. Like so how to put this? Was there a point, or probably there were, what was like a point that sticks out to you that was challenging, was difficult, you had to like, something that I'm trying to do now is like really follow my heart with things.
Yeah, there was a lot, man. And it's weird because it's like when I talk about the mountain bike journey, like that part of it was kind of seamless, but only because it was the glue that was holding my life together through so much other shit that was up and down constantly. You know, part of like the process of getting out of Edmonton, finding mountain biking, that was a really dark time for me. Like I had this accident in grade 11 with a lot of my best friends. From the period of being kind of like, you know, 17 through 21, I had a number of very, very close friends pass away. which was really hard. I had some issues with classic stuff, with my dad. There's a bunch of things going on, and mountain biking then is what kind of like helped pull me out of that. So there was that part of things. As I had mentioned, like at that point I was like really live for the moment, blah, blah, blah. But what that actually meant was like be drunk or high all the time, no matter what. And like, that's been a theme. I still love to party. I still love drinking, but my relationship with alcohol has been an up and down for my whole life and will continue to be. I always will have to watch and monitor that relationship. I've had many periods of sobriety, in my life. I probably will end up in a place where I just have to be sober, forever. I'm very close to fully sober, right now. I've had a few kind of days of drinks in the last couple months, but I've, been sober for 2 years before, and then I've kind of been back on it, and I can kind of waffle back and forth, and I'm really learning, like when and how I use that as a crutch when I'm struggling with stress and whatever. So, there's definitely been ups and downs regarding that stuff. There was, leaving North Van was really hard. As much as I was looking forward to a new life and trying to live off grid and trying to follow those things, like I still to this day miss. It's the best mountain biking in the world, and I miss it every single day. I miss some friends from there. I miss my shop, there. So there's been times where I've really struggled with motivation here and how do I feel connected to what I'm doing now. So there's definitely like ups and downs through that process. Like when I first moved to North Van, like I don't think I went home in like a year and a half, like at all. Like I just I barely talked to my mom constantly through the whole thing, but I barely talked to like my dad for a while in there. And there was some like rough moments, for sure. But mountain biking was kind of like always the thing that, again, it wasn't like I had to get up and go do it. It was like, at least tomorrow I can get up and I can go for a ride.
Yeah, it's like you're finding the light in
totally
the picture.
Yeah, and so that ended up being like the guiding force. So when I look at the journey from like beginner to like kind of mechanic to do blah, 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 blah to here, like on the biking side of things, it seems like it couldn't have happened any other way, but it's only because that was like what was holding my mental health together.
It's like the glue.
And exactly. So, and all that stuff is also an open book. It's like I feel like I could talk about dark stuff too for 5 hours,
Yeah. It helps people who are in such a place.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think
it's good to be vulnerable.
Well, it's pretty easy to look at Instagram now, right? Everyone's life is great, and it's and even my Instagram, like my shop Instagram is constantly like all it is like pictures of me riding and shopping.
You're winning on Instagram.
It's like, and you're like, that is a huge part of my life, but it's not all of my life, at all. And there is lots of like, it's I think it's far more normal to be struggling than it is to be like, fuck, things are all great, all the time. And so
Hey, I wanted to bounce back to, so you're talking about off the grid living. Personally, I partied a lot in high school too. Still like to party. I've found that the 2 times in my life where I've actually been thinking about this recently, where I haven't been partying as much as when I'm isolated from other people, other people that are influencing me. I think I'm a very impressionable person. So I try to surround myself with people that want the best for me, which I haven't always done. Even though I thought they wanted the best for me at the time.
Totally.
And so first time was during COVID, stopped drinking as much, and gosh, I think like I always use nicotine when I'm around people that use nicotine, and I don't when I'm not around people that don't use nicotine. And now in Kamloops, where I didn't know anybody when I moved here, so I didn't have anyone to drink with, and I'm not the type of person that's just gonna drink by myself. Because that's
at least not often. Anyway.
No, not often. I'll still drink by myself. But basically, just like, was there any connection for you with like being attracted to off the grid living and kind of like as it like acting almost as like a stabilizer for chaotic things in your life?
There 100% was. There was like the attraction to like the self-sufficiency piece of it, and those things which are like uplifting, but there was also this attraction of like it's like if I just made it harder to go to the bar, then I wouldn't go to the bar. You know what I mean? Or if I just made it like it was like I finally felt like I had a list of tasks that were like important enough to shut my brain down that I like just wasn't as like overwhelmed, or I wasn't as stressed out, or I wasn't like, the idea of it was like, and the actual reality of it was also really cool for like the year and a half that I, got to do it. It was incredible. Like it was kind of that. It was like I drank a lot less. I did like significantly less. And when I was drinking, it was like, because people came out to the property, we had a big bonfire, and it was fun. Like it was a much healthier way of doing it than it was like, I'm just drinking because that's what I do at 5 o'clock.
As an act of celebration.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that you're totally right. That little bit of isolation, but not just like not feeling alone. It was like I always had like, either I'm trying to get the garden going, or I'm trying to, you're finishing the shed, or you're trying to, cut down this structure or build that structure, or you're trying to, chop firewood, or you're like, firewood is like a killer out here. Like that was all the heat I had for my house was through this wood boiler that worked really, really well. But I would go through like 6 cords of wood easy in winter. So it was like I had to be, chopping it all the time, right? Like while working full time, while living an hour out of town each way. So it's like I just had all these things to do that I enjoyed doing. Yeah. That then just kind of like let me step away from some of that stuff a little bit more. So I still crave it. I still crave getting back to that lifestyle for sure.
That is super cool. It's funny, like in high school when I first got my driver's license, it's like taskless freedom. Yeah. Where you just didn't like, I'm pretty good at school, didn't go out of my way to take hard classes. I actually did get a tutor for Algebra 2 trig. Yeah. But needed that to
not surprised. So would I.
Fail a class. Yeah. Just not my fail classes. Yeah. Anyways, but it was like there's joy. There was a certain amount of joy from taskless living. Where it's like, I don't have shit to do. Mom's cooking dinner tonight. Like, yeah. And then, it's almost like the devil holding up a bunch of treats and be like, come here, take the treats. Totally. And then you realize how miserable it is. And then, big transfer to taskful living. You always have things to do. Like, I just think that's so rad how, like,
totally, man. Well, it's like you think that it's like when you first get into it, you're totally right. It's like this freedom. Like I can do anything. So if I choose to get fucked up at 11 a.m., I can get like that's rad. And then you do that for a while, and then you're like, oh man, it'd kind of be nice to like not be doing this. And I found it like really hard to get out of that without having these other things to do. Like like left to my own devices. So I totally get that. Like. You're totally right. Idle living or taskless living is like an opportunity. The only opportunity for like fun and fulfillment in those scenarios is like, through like usually some intoxication of some sort, or it's skateboarding, right? Or it's mountain biking, or it's whatever. But you also get to the point where it's like, I literally can't mountain bike 24 hours a day. No, so like, what else am I going to do? Yeah. And it's pretty easy to. And I think anyone that's in those sports too, probably like you, obviously you growing up in Alaska, skiing, big stuff. Like you're programmed.
Like I had nothing to do.
No, but you're programmed to like things that are like a little bit risky right from the get go. And so drugs and alcohol like allow this like mundane task. I gotta fold laundry. I gotta, you know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden it's like
have a beer when you're folding laundry.
Yeah, it's like I can deal with this. It just like it somehow like makes it seem like more fun, and we're so like fun I think is such a driver of 99% of what's positive in my life, but it can also be a driver to the negative because there are some tasks that are just tasks and they're just hard and they're just part of life, and it's like not that you can't try to find fun in them, but it's like folding laundry is never going to be fun, but I'm going to have to do it. But that's where like those things like cutting firewood, we're still type 2, but I could like see and enjoy them without the rest of it. Like I could do it just for the sake of doing that activity, and it was awesome. Same with trail building, right? I can do that just not that I haven't built trail significantly inebriated as well. I think everyone that has,
it's good to get hammered and build some trail.
You can definitely do that too. So, yeah, it's a fine line. Like I think you see that in a lot of like adrenaline athletes, quote unquote. Is like there's a certain risk reward factor there that people are pretty okay with being on the riskier side of things, and everyone's got to manage their own lives that way. And I've got some friends that are completely sober now, and have crawled themselves out of some pretty dark places, and it's incredible to watch. I got other friends that are able to totally do the moderation thing in a completely great and healthy way, and then I got other friends that are still you know, like hitting it pretty hard. And all of them are living, and everyone just has to figure out where, you know, where you sit.
Yeah, you got to be able to be your own boss.
Totally.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on, like, again, really following your heart.
Yeah.
And just life, I suppose. So we were talking about adrenaline tasks and how it's contains a lot of meaning and fun and enjoyment, and then folding laundry isn't necessarily fun, but it is meaningful because it creates organization in your life so that you can focus and put more energy into fun things. And like that's been one of the big constants for me recently. Is maybe I'll get a little upset because I'm not doing something that's quote unquote like immediately fun. But then I just take a deep breath and ask myself, well, is it meaningful? And then I'll like be a little fussy, and I'll be like, oh, yeah. And do it. And
I got to admit to myself that it is, and that sucks too.
And then your ego's all pissed off because you're not pleasing it like you used to.
Totally.
Like I used to. Anyways, that's.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think that it's like, it took me a long time to get there, and it took me getting to a place in my life, and I still am not fully there by far. Ask, you know, Katie, another one of the owners, like there's a lot of tasks that I know are meaningful and not fun that I like A, suck at, and B, just haven't been able to really learn. Like, thank God she's here doing a lot of those.
Yeah, Katie's the best.
So we can run this. Jack, you know, John, like the whole team that we have here is incredible, because there's still a lot of those tasks that I have a hard time, even though I know it's meaningful. I know it's necessary, and I still have a hard time, you know, connecting like to it on an emotional level. I think for a long time it was back to that like live for the moment type thing, and then you start realizing like, okay, fuck, 5 years have gone by and I'm miserable because I haven't done anything to set myself up to be better now than I was then. And then you're like, so I just wasted all that time because I wasn't doing meaningful tasks. All I was doing was like fun tasks, right? And so I think you're right. Like, I think it's like learning how to find power in that meaning, knowing that it's like, but to do that, it's like you also need to know kind of which direction you're trying to push. It doesn't need to be the same direction you're gonna be on forever. People change their directions all the time, but like if you don't have any direction, totally, so it's like whatever direction you're going in, go in it. You know?
Just like needs to contain meaning.
Yeah, it totally does. And without it, it's like, what's the point?
And it is like, I mean, I guess like there's sometimes a lot of like family pressure to do something, like say if dad's a doctor, for example, like my dad's not a doctor, but you know, and then it's like, well, you should go to this school because you're gonna make a lot of money. And like deep down, all parents just, I think really, if they're good parents, they just want their kids to be safe and like be financially secure. And all that good stuff. But it's just like finding paths it's hard, man. Process.
Well, and that was the thing like that I went through with my parents in a big way. And my parents and I are really close now. And for the most of my life, we've been really close. Like, don't get me wrong. I had some rough periods. But same thing, like my dad's a lawyer, my mom's a lawyer, my brother's a surgeon, my sister's a psychologist.
Good Lord.
And I'm like, hey, let's get backflip, check it out, you know, like, want a beer? Like,
that's so funny.
You know, so there was definitely like a lot of that. You know, like, and they wanted me to be in post-secondary to do it, not because they were like, this is the only way to be happy, but because for them, they were like, that's how I can secure that 10 years from now, he will be happy, right? Like, that's a path. And it's the only path that we know that will guarantee you at least a financial reward in a career that will allow you to live. You know, like that was, and so they really struggled with me, like finding a different way to go about it. And it really took, you know, a lot of years in where they started seeing like, holy shit, like he is still mountain biking every day, but he's also working his ass off to make mountain biking, you know, something that will pay the bills, that will do the things, that will, you know, and it like, and now I think like their tune overall in terms of like what does a path through the world look like has opened up in a huge way, because they're like, man, we're watching it happen. Like we're watching, you know, and it was so crazy because I used to always get in fights with my dad where he'd be like, oh, you can be anything you want. And I'd be like, well, I want to be a mountain biker. And it was like, well, not that though, you know, kind of thing. It was like, if you work hard, I'm like, well, I'm going to go work hard at this. He's like, no, I think you should, you know, like, and again, it came only from a place, like you said, like they just want what's best for you. They just want security for you, you know, and yeah, it's definitely, but finding a path is hard. Like takes all kinds of crazy ups and downs, and Yeah. I mean, follow yourself, I guess, right?
Yeah, completely. Because you have to go to sleep with yourself at night.
Totally.
Your parents don't go to sleep as you at night.
Yeah, totally, man. It's like, and as long as you can look at yourself in the mirror and be proud of the person that's looking back at you, right? Like,
yeah, that means a lot. Like that makes my heart warm.
Yeah. What else do you have? When it all ends. I think that was a big thing, like dealing with like so many friends passing away early too, was like death has had a really weird, not that a lot of people dealt with it, so this has just been my experience with it, but it really changed the way that I like connected with like what was important, because it was like, man, all of these friends of mine worked so hard at all these goals, and then none of that shit mattered because chance just like changed it. So it was like, why am I going to put any effort into this shit that in my head doesn't matter right now, when there is no guarantee for tomorrow, there is no guarantee for this. But that can also lead you, and led me like very far the opposite direction, too far the opposite direction. And now it's like, okay, I'm hoping that I can like continue to grow and keep coming back to that middle ground, right? Whereas like there's some of the meaningfulness that isn't necessarily like the fun stuff, but it's meaningful and it's powerful and it's necessary for growth and for happiness. And then there's also the like, don't put too much stock in anything XYZ immediate, because like it could disappear. So focus on what's important.
Yeah,
focus on what's,
completely.
Yeah. So I mean, do you find that your views on just life in general have shifted from living in because this is the biggest place you've ever lived, if I understand this correctly, right?
Yeah, Juneau's 30,000. Bozeman is, I want to say it varies because it's a huge college town.
Yep.
But like around 50, and then it's like 120 here.
Yes. Yeah. So do you find that like even just in the difference of like a geographic area that you've moved to with differing amounts of people and influences, like has that changed the way that you've like integrated with your life?
Oh, completely. That's a great question.
Thank you. I was thinking about it all night. Yeah.
Nice. That's it. Gosh. Yeah. So I'm gonna start from the beginning then. Of course, as you mentioned, growing up in Alaska, I hung out with a bunch of people that like to go outside and do stuff.
Yep.
But the other side of that coin is that there's a lot of people that like to stay inside and like smoke pot all day on rainy days because I don't want to go outside, it's raining. That was me too. Like I was no better than any of like, is like a, those friendships where you feed off of each other but not in the right way. Yeah. So it was like that in Alaska, and I just kind of realized that I needed to step away. So that was like the part one of my life.
Journey.
Journey. Fuck it. That was like, I just want to do what's fun and what's really rewarding, and then I lacked meaning and wasn't happy with myself. So thank God that COVID happened for me. Let's just put it that way. I know it affected a lot of people's lives in not great ways, but it affected my life in a really great way, because through me, just basically I was working one day and we had this group chat called Stoners with Boners, and
awesome.
One of the kids texted me, he was like, how come we don't hang out anymore? He was probably like not feeling super great, like nice kid, really good friend for what it was. And I texted back, I was like, because I'm working all day. And then it just sort of hit me that I needed to like change
it up.
So I just dipped out of the group chat. Like I only one of the kids, my best friend, Jake. He's a great guy. He lives in Bozeman.
Oh, sweet.
I moved to Bozeman with him actually.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he was my neighbor too. But he was like the one kid that I still hung out with. But that's because he wanted to go do stuff.
Yeah.
He was a fun kid to hang out with. But anyways, shifted from that. Got really into self-help books because I needed direction and I wasn't getting it from where I was looking. So I found, if you know who David Goggins is.
I do,
David Goggins. Shout out to David Goggins. He helped me a lot, actually. I read his book, and his whole sort of thing is like, fuck pain. Just do it.
Keep pushing. Keep going.
Right? So
and consistency, right? Consistency. Like keep being at it, right?
Yeah, like even if you don't want to. I was like, whoa, this goes against everything I've ever thought about and stood for.
Yeah, totally.
So we basically like got into endurance running, and like, gosh, I think the summer after I read the book was the second summer of COVID.
Yeah.
I think it lasted 2 summers.
Yeah, it's all blurred.
It was like Juno was like fairly left leaning, and they were like, gotta be safe. So it lasted 2 summers in Juno, I think. Anyways, like second summer, I was like really getting into that discipline type stuff. So I like did a triathlon. It was a short one, but it was still a triathlon. And I like, gosh, I remember I did like a 16-mile ridge race, and that meant a lot to me because I only decided I was going to do it the week before, and I'd never run over like 7 miles the week before. And then my friend, we went heli skiing in Alaska. Yeah. And made our way down to the parking lot. My friend was talking to this like professional runner dude, and she was like trying to get me to do it all day. And she goes, "Oh, Nolan's doing that ridge race too." And I was like, "Ah!"
Voluntold, baby.
Voluntold. Yeah. I love that. Friends are great that way.
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
The right ones. Yeah.
Yeah, the right ones. Anyways, I like ran 16 miles on flat ground the next day just to make sure I wasn't going to die. And I was like, all right, that really sucked. It was painful. But I broke my pelvis when I was a freshman in high school. So like, it was like dragging my right leg for the last 5 miles. It sucked. Yeah. I was like, fuck it. I'm going to do it anyways. Trained with the runner dude one day. He was like, yeah, I think you're in better shape. Anyways, kind of rambling. But long story short, got stoked about staying hard. Yeah. And just like doing shit. And then it's weird, like, my life like has big pendulum swings. Yeah. So it swung, and I basically got like kind of miserable from being too disciplined. Yeah. Because I would beat myself. I don't know if that happened for you a whole lot, but like I would beat myself up for when I like wouldn't do a task that I had set out to do. Yeah. And if I got lazy and like drank beer instead, because I had just freshly transitioned out of that just have fun state. Yeah. And that really affected me poorly too. So I stopped being as disciplined and just was kind of disciplined. It was a nice middle ground. And moved to Montana. Found mountain biking too during this whole time. So that was super meaningful. Kind of got into trail building. Hung out with my brother and his friends a ton because they all mountain bike. It was pretty
in Montana or Montana. Nice. Yeah,
and in Alaska. But they all lived in Montana. Oh, crazy. So then it was like, dude, you gotta come to Montana. I went and visited one winter break actually, and I went ski touring for a couple of days in Cook City. And that's what brought you down there. Yeah, it's what like sold me out. I was like, damn, this place is where I need to go.
And did your friend moved with you when you finally went together?
We moved into a house together.
With your brother and stuff too, or just on your own?
Sorry, just my friend and I moved into an apartment building with a couple other people we didn't know. Yeah. They were a little dirty. It was fine.
Shit happens.
Yeah, shit happens. Anyways, kind of went through that. Gosh, this is a long story. Got a girlfriend, kind of right when I got to Bozeman. Funny enough, she's from Alaska. Super disciplined. Yeah. Like the most disciplined person that I knew. Yeah. And that got me pretty stoked about like being disciplined again. Yeah. And yada yada yada. Like I learned so much from her. Like literally, like couldn't thank her enough. Yeah. But some shit went down. We dated for like about a year. Some stuff went down, excuse my language. Yeah. And anyways, just like I felt super damaged towards the end of it. Like a lot of people knew stuff that I didn't know for a while. And it's hard, just like it worked me. Yeah, it was not good for me at all. Yeah. In the moment. And anyways, I was like, all right, fuck this. Like I don't want to see certain people. Totally. And both like where you like something bad happens and everything sort of just reminds you of 100%. That thing. Yeah. Gosh, it's horrible. Yeah, it was like one of the biggest reasons that like when I left Edmonton, it's like I need to leave. Like I'm not getting past this point in my life here because everything is connected to like this thing. Yeah. Now I can go back and I love it. I'm so thankful I grew up there, but like I totally know that feeling. Yeah, of, like, it's like you're technically running away, but you need the perspective. Yeah, totally. You need the space. Yeah. Yeah, so I was like, after that happened, after I like really found out what happened, I was like, man, fuck this. I'm going to Kamloops, baby. I'm out. Yeah. Like, and how did you meet with like Matt before this happened? Because you met him. Oh yeah. I'll get to that. Okay. That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. I will touch on that when I get that part in the story. Anyways. I was like exploring exchange programs to go on, and I stumbled upon Kamloops. I was like, all right, Well, I have to apply to 5 places for this exchange program.
Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't guaranteed that I was going to live here, but it was my number one choice. And then I applied to like 5 other places that had sick biking in the UK. I was like, fuck, I really hope I don't move to the UK, but I really want to go to Kamloops, so I'm going to send it. And it worked out for me.
Wicked. Oh, see, like that's where I think why I asked, because I for some reason thought that your choice to come to Kamloops was connected to like to the trail building and like that side of things too. So it's cool to hear that like you actually had made that choice to come here before like even meeting that and like doing
Because
it was all for some reason I thought that was like flipped in my head. So that's cool.
So around thanks. Around that time, I was looking for a summer job because the first summer I moved to Bozeman, I was a personal trainer. And that was super cool. And I liked helping people. And I was like, fuck, I'm still inside. I was like, hey, this isn't my thing. So my buddy works for, works for TerraFlow Trail Building Company. They're, I would say, the biggest trail building company in Montana.
Cool.
They're super cool. Pete Costain's a really great guy. I want to have him on the podcast.
Wicked, man. Shout out to you, Pete. Get on it, buddy. Yeah.
Anyways, through this whole conundrum of feeling pretty betrayed and wanting big change, I applied to the exchange program. That was sitting, didn't know if I was going to, what place I was going to accept to do. So while I was sitting, I had applied to be a trail builder because I wanted to be outside. Trying to follow my heart. And blah, 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 blah. It was actually
got the job.
Got the job. That was great. And then it actually worked out that I was in Utah on a spring break freeriding trip with all my buddies that I found out I was moving to Kamloops.
Oh, no way.
I was like having the best time riding my bike for a week, and like I got the email and I just like screamed super loud. I was like, ah! I moved to Kamloops.
Just pumped, jazzed up.
Super pumped. Anyways, lived in my truck that summer. I lived in my brother's house a little bit, but mostly in my truck for that summer because I just like didn't really trust anybody at all. To, like at least to live with people. So I was like,
people getting that close is like tough, especially after shit goes down.
Yeah, no, I was just like, fuck that. I just want to like kind of live in my truck.
Just do my thing.
So Big Sky is 45 minutes away from Bozeman. And we did most of our work in Big Sky.
Okay.
So I would live in different parking lots last summer in Big Sky. It was super fun. I slept great. It was just like wake up and then you're already at the place where you're clocking in, so you don't have the 45-minute down and back. Save some money. It was cool. And then moved up to Kamloops. Now I'm going to get to your question, which is how I meet Matt. So this really great guy, like God among men, Chris Pickering, he lives in Fernie, I think. And anyways, there's a little like free ride competition at Legacy Bike Park, and which is in the Flathead, Montana. It's in Lakeside, for anybody wondering. And this dude just kind of seemed like he needed someone to talk to. He was just like, I was like, yo, you know? And we get to chat, and it was like a weekend event. So on the last day, he was like, hey man, I remember I was wearing like a bright orange spacesuit for the free ride competition. And he was like, yo, you gotta meet my friend Matt, like you'd like this. And so he gave me some lifting plates for ramps that you screw into sides of ramps to put chains around to lift them up with like a machine and move them places.
Change them up.
Change them up, set them in. And anyways, that's how I met Matt.
Cool.
And now I'm here, and it's also been a process being here, meeting friends.
Totally.
And I've definitely been pretty, I wouldn't say not depressed, but sad at times. That I just because I missed my friends.
Totally, man.
Still do. And even I was feeling like super great, and now I'm feeling great because I like went home for winter break. And I got so much engagement for like 2 weeks, and everybody knew who I was, and everyone was like, no.
Feels good, man.
So good.
Yeah, feels good.
And it kind of came back here. It was a little like, whoa.
Totally.
Friends. And
I know that feeling a lot. Like I still struggle with that here. You know, I've had some really amazing things happen in my life since I moved here. Like really amazing. I've learned a lot. I've met some incredible people. You know, some of the absolute best relationships of my life, and most meaningful, most powerful, and I think relationships that are gonna like literally define my entire future moving forward. But like I was saying earlier too, I still struggle with like the friends that I made at that period of my life that are like in North Van, that community, even though some of them don't even live in North Van anymore either, right?
Yeah.
Like, so they've also spread out, but you just like, and it's like, sometimes I don't know if I miss like a place or I miss a time, like, do I miss like when it was like felt simpler and it was like, just like more, not like more connected, but with like just this group of people that were super tight. And you're just doing this kind of same thing all the time. But then it's like, you always hear that, like, if you don't get uncomfortable, you never grow. Right. And it's like, which is cool to see you come here and then seeing you like connect with, with everyone at the shop here, even to come riding I think we only got one group ride in really before we went.
That was super fun though.
And see what you're riding though, even out at Matt, see you connecting with like Liam, see you connecting with, Soren and those people out there too.
Yeah, I played basketball with Soren yesterday.
Yeah, right.
I was like rad. So stoked that I just had a friend that I could hit up, like, yo, you want to shoot some hoops?
Yeah, totally, right?
So fun.
Yeah, which is super cool. And like that's also pretty special. So it's like and for like your listeners that don't know, why don't you talk about that process with Bill and Matt, like, and what that whole thing is about, and like what they're trying to do there. And
yeah, so Matt McTuff is a professional mountain biker.
Yeah.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah.
He was my first friend when I moved to, like, first notable friend when I moved to Kamloops. Matt McDuff loves big air.
He does.
That's pretty much his main jig is big air.
He's good at it.
He's really good at big air, loves it, and also really good on the street bike too.
Yeah.
Anyways,
and crazy tie-in story before we forget. I want to get back to this, but Matt McDuff, it's funny because I know him because my best friend Baker, who gave me the first bike that I ripped the derailleur off, Matt lived in Baker's basement in North Van for a long time before moving out here and getting his spot. So it's like so funny how everything everalways connects and comes through.
Things come around.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But anyway, so back to this. So
so essentially, when he picked up the lifting plates, I told him I had prior construction experience. My dad's a builder. And I said I know how to use a saw. And I can measure stuff. And he was stoked. So had me out to the compound, and we built a tower made out of pallets.
Rad.
And it was super cool. Anyway, they're just like really fired up. Also, he's my only friend. So like I was like, man, social interaction.
Totally.
Like, please, like, I want to help here as much as I possibly can. And anyways, I've learned so much from one of my favorite things about this is how I could best describe what Matt's kind of about without like just saying so much shit, is like he's willing to like share the wealth.
Totally.
Is like, I think one of the biggest messages of the Big Air compound is like, if you're willing to help him, he'll help you. So I've helped him a bunch, and then he gave me a bike frame. And that's like a couple $1,000.
Yeah, totally.
That's really damn cool.
And you're learning from one of the best ramp builders in the business.
Yeah, he's been doing it for 10 years. He's literally a master ramp builder.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah. So he, for example, one day he was building ramps, and like, we just started working, and he could have given me some shitty little job that I wouldn't have minded, mind you, but it wasn't building ramps, right? But instead, he was like, hey man, you want to like learn how to do this actually? It's like, hell yeah. So he took the time, even though he was really busy, to teach me how to build a ramp radius and actually like be involved as him. And that's what the Big Air compound and Matt's about, is, to me, my experience at least, is just including people and spreading the love. He's got a bunch of, he'll say funny shit like, a lot, but one of the things that he says that I keep on thinking about is like, love is the most powerful force. And that's sort of what I think my biggest takeaway from exchange so far is like, even though I came here like honestly kind of damaged and a little like not too stoked about like just people in general. It's like, man, dude, people like have not been on
people suck.
Not all people. I still have good friends in Bozeman. But like some people suck.
Individuals are rad. People suck.
The group think can really bite you in the ass sometimes. Anyway, it's just like kind of reignited that like just throw love at like everything.
And there's good people out there.
Yeah, there's such good people out there, and it's. Anyways, yeah, that's the Big Air compound.
That's cool.
If you, I'll
find a link for it.
I'll throw a link in.
He's got some cool vids out.
Big Air.
Yeah.
Bang. I'll send a link down there. Yeah, basically just building big ass jumps. I don't
like really pushing like a ton of free ride stuff, which is pretty cool. Like,
as Art Willie would say, pushing the limits of action sports.
100%. Like, and it's rad to see, like, and I love seeing it, you know, and I got to make more of an effort, Matt. I'm sorry. I know I'm supposed to be out there already. And, but, you know, I've been able to talk to them a few times coming in here and working with stuff. And it's like, those are the people that it's like, it's so fun to work with people like that are, for me here, it's been a really cool experience at all because it's like, I haven't had the same level of, I mean, it's one thing doing the EWS thing and traveling the world and racing like at a very high level and doing that side of things, but like back in the shop environment, I haven't had the same thing I had in North Down, which is getting to work with all these like people cutting edge that were really pushing the sport and like developing it, you know. So it's so cool to see what he's doing and to see how hard he's working to do it, you know, like
it's insane
the amount of time and effort that he's personally putting in, but then also the energy he's getting out of other people, not because he's demanding and not, but because he's like he's willing to like give it to teach to do it, and then all of a sudden people want to help out, right? Which is also a good message for me to keep
it's
remembering.
Funny what happens when you're not an asshole mountain
yeah, it is weird, eh? I still struggle with that sometimes. Anyone that knows me well knows that, but
people it's gosh, it's
rad.
It's kind of like it's kind of a role model
totally
for me in the time that I really needed one. And when
he's big on like that same, not necessarily David Goggins, but that same type of like, if you see it and you want it, do it. Like get after it. Don't like
talking to him about that.
You know, don't sit. No one's gonna do it for you. Like, you know, it seems to be, and I don't know that super well about him, but it seems to be from his social media presence, from my interactions I have had with him, from what I see happening in his interviews and stuff.
I can confirm that.
Yeah, you know, like very
just from the interactions. I've actually worked quite a bit of hours at that place.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's super rad. His mindset. One of the things that David, I think he was talking to me about it because he saw a video of David Goggins talking about it, but it's one of the things that I've been trying because I come to a new place, you're going to be a little bored because you don't have those things that you used to do in your old place, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that David Goggins talks about and that Matt and I were talking about maybe a month ago was being prepared. This is a question for you, Dave.
Yeah.
Being prepared when there's nothing to be prepared for. Like staying excited, like just getting better when there's no event coming up. There's no one telling you to do something, but just like day after day discipline, just not giving a fuck.
Yeah.
Like I love that. I personally like try to strive for that every single day.
Yeah.
I don't always get there, but I strive for it. And what's that like? Is there like, what's that mean to you?
I mean, it's like, I definitely still struggle with that. There's a couple sides of it. I think I'm pretty good at the what side of it that's like physical and about like, you know, staying in decent shape and doing whatever, like whether it's, you know, making sure that and I'm not a good person to like, I don't train well for events. Like I will train if I have something specific to go on, but I'm not like a huge like in the gym kind of person. Gym, bro. But I am very into yoga and I have been for a lot of years. And so it's like maintaining those things too, like no matter what's going on, whether I have a reason to or not, because the reason is just the doing it isn't of itself the reason. Like it helps me feel better, it helps me be prepared, it helps me embrace an opportunity to go get a one-off race or a one-off ski trip and feel good about doing it, right? And be ready. So it's like I'm okay with that stuff. You know, in terms of the shop stuff, I think there's always those things around being prepared by like, you know, making sure that you're using slow times to look at projects that maybe, you know, you really wished things were a different way when things were chaotic or busy. And it's like, well, how can I make them a different way the next time they're chaotic or busy? And it's like, try to tick things off the list. It's like, you know, busy seasons end in shops. And it's like your motivation to do anything is like at the bottom. Because you're just like, man, it has been like nonstop, hair straight back, like full pinned. I just want to chill. But it's like, some of the reason why things were so gnarly and stressful was because I wasn't ready for them from the year before, through lack of planning, not knowing, valid reasons, whatever. But it's like, okay, so now I've got slow time again. So what can I do now when my motivation is low? Like, how can I make a list of tasks that I can still tick off to make sure that next year maybe I can enjoy that a little bit more, right? Instead of just being like, full pinned. So that's kind of like where I try to be there. It is tough for me to do that. I could probably use a little bit more of that discipline in my life, to be quite honest, because I do derive a lot of my motivation from enjoyment, like a lot of it still to this day.
Yeah.
And
not a bad way to live your life.
No. And it can be great, Yeah, but when you get those like doldrums though, right? When you're mentally tired and nothing's fun, then it's hard to do anything, because you're like, if the only thing that I'm doing this for isn't like discipline based, it's about like these enjoyment aspects, and I'm just in a shitty place where it's like things are hard, then you end up like not doing anything. And I've been there at various points in my life where I just feel like I've like, for a month or two, I've just kind of done like nothing. For me, it's like I retreat just into reading. I become like a hermit. I just like crush books and
dealing with like
play
burnout,
like I just burn out and yeah, I think burnout's been a big one like in my life. I think it still kind of is. When you're running your own thing and stuff for a while, and you're just like trying to do it all, and you're just tapped, and like vacations aren't really a thing that happen much.
Yeah, it's like, work all day at the shop, and not saying that group rides aren't the shit, but it's like you work all day and it's like, totally. It's like, bitch, no rest, group ride.
Yeah, and that's like the thing. Like,
just as an example.
Well, even those though, it's like I wish I was more present, like at group rides, and not just group rides, but like friendly rides. But it's like sometimes in the summer, it's like I might get a ride a week, which for me is like nothing. And it's like I crave riding on my own a lot, or with a very small, like trusted group of people.
I think everybody does.
I want to go ride the trails I want to go ride, which isn't necessarily compatible all the time with a group of 20 people to go ride. And so I can like really struggle with that, because there are times in my life where I've really heard that, like, he can be a little stuck up with the ride snob, and it's not even not true, to be quite honest. Like I don't necessarily want it to be, but it's like that's one of the main pillars of my mental health, is getting out on my bike.
What's up, Ken?
You're right. It was a 32.
Yeah, told you. Booyah. Seal delivery.
This is our coworker, Kaylin. Kaylin's going to come on the podcast one day.
Yeah. Yeah, when I'm like, only have that one ride, I am selfish with it, because I'm like, if I don't get it the way I want it, then I'm going even further down the rabbit hole. Then this ride that I'm on now is no longer the thing that's like fulfilling me and recharging me and whatever. It's just another thing I have to do.
Oh, it's like Grumpy Dave might be there after that.
Exactly. Yeah, it just shifts, which isn't great. Yeah. So,
yeah, I get that too. I've been pretty much just like repeat exactly what you said, where it's like, like fucking Nolan just wants to do what he wants to do, and you should be having fun. Like, that's why we're doing this, right? And it's like, but it's what you want to do.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like,
and it's hard, right? Like, and those are.
What's up, bro?
Yeah, just take the whole bin. There you go. Then you can pick out what you need. Something's gonna be right.
I completely.
Yeah, those things can just be tough. Like, it's
relate to that.
Yeah, and then you also take a ride, and you take a ride in hard stuff, and then it's just like backcountry skiing, right? Like, I cannot go backcountry skiing without a group of people that like I know, I trust. Like, how are you going to react if shit hits the fan?
Well, yeah, definitely.
And I've been really lucky.
That's essential.
Totally, and I've been really lucky backcountry skiing to not really be in those spots much. But mountain biking is the same way. Like, when you're going to ride really gnarly or hard stuff, or even not even hard stuff, shit can happen anywhere, right? And it's like, I want to go.
Died on trail ride.
Yeah.
Right?
He did.
That is correct.
Yeah, it is. And from an accident that was, when you look at like the way he went down over his career, and you look at what ended up causing the injury that killed him. And I remember getting called that morning right after Tippy got off the phone with Jordy's family. I worked with Jordy very briefly. I was really lucky to work with him on a few different bike builds. So at that time, I was doing a lot of work for YT in North Vancouver, and Jordy had just been on to YT. And so we were trying to find a way. We worked on a couple different bike builds and some really fun stuff. And Jordy like blew my mind what a cool dude he was, especially because I had a preconceived notion of who Jordy was from watching him in his video parts and stuff.
Everybody does. That man was tatted up.
And that dude was like the epitome of do not judge a book by its cover. and he was legitimately one of the nicest dudes I've ever met. He was rad. We were working a lot on the product. I'm trying to get his e-bike run so that he could bar spin on it and single crown. And we were doing all these like funny things and whatever. And I was really fortunate to work with him and to like have a small relationship with him and to see how like what an impact he had on some, and go to some different events and see him there. And yeah, that was incredible. So I can't remember what we were talking. Oh yeah, just any ride can be dangerous. So it's like being with people that I know that if shit hits the fan aren't going to just freak out and like make everything worse, because that sucks.
Yeah, that's important.
And so that part's can be hard about riding. It's like, yeah, maybe I'm being a little bit of a ride snob and I don't always want to be. And that doesn't mean I don't want to go ride with beginners, because I also love doing that. I love coaching. I love bringing people out that are just getting into it, because I do really like that idea of like, you dropping off a curb is the same thing as me hitting a gap of whatever size. It's the same adrenaline rush. It's just a matter of scale at that point. And like teaching people and showing people how fun it can be and what it can do. That part's rad. But that ride is a ride that I'm getting prepared for in a very different way than my ride to blow off steam from working this week. Like those are different rides. So it's like, I'm not going on this beginner ride with that mindset, and I'm not going on this ride with that mindset. So if I only get one ride, I have to pick and choose which one it's going to be, and both are great, but there's a time and a place for both of them, and I need both of them to work. So it's like, there is a time where it's like, yeah, like, no, I don't want to go on this group ride, and I don't want to go and, cruise party laps down, whatever. It's like, I only have like this lap, and I want to get it, and I want to get what I want to ride. And yeah, it is what it is.
It's like Dave takes a left, but everybody else takes a right.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully someone wants to come in, Brad.
Yeah, hopefully.
No, not always, right? Like, we all have our favorite trails. We all have our trails that we like to ride, and so it's kind of where that sits.
Yeah,
that was also a rambling conversation.
Yeah, that's all right. It's super funny how conversations flow so much better when you're face to face with someone.
Totally.
Than online. Like, I'm sure the listeners can tell as well that like it's just like more seamless.
Well, it's just like a way more natural thing. As good as we're getting at talking to screens, like that's part of our world now. But there's still something about, and I've done a few podcast episodes as well where you're like, you're over the computer and you're like, and then you're like checking notes and you're trying to like, it's just easier when you're in person. You're reading all these cues that you don't necessarily see still through a screen, and it's easier to even interrupt and talk and not interrupt, and it's just better.
Yeah.
So
hey, not that I want to stop talking by any means. I do have to be home by 5 o'clock. So
there is a schedule here. Yeah. What time are we at?
The podcasts are usually an hour.
Oh, sweet. So we're like there.
Even more. You want to keep on? Are you?
I'm good to like end it whatever, man. It's been a pleasure. It's been great to share. We could always do a round 2 some other time too.
Yeah.
It's like, I love support. I love what you're doing. First of all, I love that you're like taking the time and the energy to like do it. I was just talking to Nolan earlier here. Like, I've tried to get a podcast started for a year now, and I've been like caught up in all this minutia of like, this doesn't sound right. And I'm trying to get the right title song, and I'm trying to like, blah, and I just stalled out. It just completely like dead on the water for me. And so then to be able to like watch you just like do that Dave Goggins, like get it done, figure it out, start doing it, figure out making it perfect later, start doing it is like the thing that you have to start with. That's been awesome. Like, so I love being a part of that. That part's cool. Like, yeah, it's been great. So I mean, I'd gladly do it again. It's easy to cap it in an hour now too. And
I do want to ask you about one more thing.
Actually,
2 more questions. I got
fire away.
A ton of bangers here.
Yeah,
but it would take like another hour or 2.
One day we'll do a 5-hour freeform. Yeah.
Dude, seriously. So one of the things that really blew me away when I started working at District was basically your willingness to teach me things. Like, I brought in my dirt jumper. You fixed my wheel for me. You showed me how. You talked it through. Caitlin showed me how to bleed my brakes. Even though I could have used a refresher. I could figure it out on YouTube. It's simple enough. But like the point is that he showed me how. You showed me how. You've let me work on my bike before while getting paid. That's badass. Like you're it's like it's to me it's a mindset of abundance, because what you could have done was been like, well, no, I'm paying you to like sweep the floor, bitch, right?
Yeah, totally.
But You didn't. And like I'm really fascinated by that mindset of like abundance, of willingness, of it's the same mindset that Matt has about like what's your
I mean, I think that the reality is it's like I'm just at a point in my life and in all these relationships that you've had with all these people, right? That it's like if you don't want to be here as an employee, as a person, as a friend, as a lover, as a partner, there's all sorts of ways that this world like tries to like force people to be places where they don't want to be.
Oh,
and it's like,
gosh, that's a good thought.
Yeah, so it's like if you, even if I'm being selfish, so let's take out any altruistic motives that I like teaching. I think it's cool. Let's take all that shit out and say I just want to make money as a shop owner. How do I make sure that my staff are the most engaged that they can be? So let's like take out, that's not true. That's not the main reason. But like, even if you look at it from the cynical lens, it's still the like better thing to do, right? Is to like help you be engaged, help you learn, help you be excited, So when you couple that with like, it's also things that I like to do because it's like, that's what got me into riding. That's what supported me. That's what changed my life was other people, from LJ Van Oyen, Andrew Baker, like I was saying, Grant Laird, Jeff Bryson, Tippy, Wade, all these people that gave me a chance and let me learn and let me grow and like did all this stuff with me. Naz from Arzoki was like such a huge influence on me, early on. And like, that's shaped my life. So it's like the ability to then now be in a position to share that is just so rewarding in and of itself. And it's like, I also think that it's like, we're slow. We have tasks we need to get done for sure. But it's like, then when it's like, working on your own bike, I've got some staff like, Kalen that was just in, right? Like, he's been working on a custom shim stack for his shock for, probably 4 or 5 rebuilds now, some of which are happening, when we've been slow or on paid time. But it's like, that's not benefiting him. That's making him a better mechanic. That's like showing him that he's now experimenting, not on like a customer shock on a custom shim tune. He's trying stuff. He's understanding how shims work because he's doing them, on his own. And it's like, yes, he comes in after hours and he comes in, but it's like, I am in a position where I have the tools, I have the setup, we have the vacuum leader, like, and we've worked hard to have those things. So it's like when then employees can like learn that stuff, it just makes you like more invested in what you're doing, and passion makes you more invested in what you're doing. And like I said, it's like I could force you to sit there and sweep the floor, but it's like, why? Like, why when we could do this? And then there's a time you're like, then you notice like, oh shit, the floor needs to be swept. So you already have the broom up and sweeping it because you're invested in the overall like happiness of the shop, right? So instead of me being in a place where it's like I want to order people around, and I walk that line not super well, there's a time where I could probably put my boss hat on a little bit more and be like, hey guys, like,
you're a really good boss.
Let's tighten up the ship a little bit and let's like, do this. There's probably some times where that could happen, but for the most part, I also like, it's cool to know that like I feel like I could hang out with any one of my employees, on any given day. I can go ride with them, and if I ever needed anything, like I could call them and ask them, not work related. And I think that I'm very confident that within their power they would do anything because there is this relationship of like respect and of like, just passion behind doing what we love to do.
Yeah, it's like love is the most powerful force.
Totally, yeah. So that nailed it, man. So yeah, I think that's like where that comes from. And like I teach a lot of clinics, both in the shop for people to learn brake bleeds and wheel builds and whatever. I teach for the Kamloops Adult Learning Society. I teach courses for them.
Oh, really?
That's awesome. twice a year, and it's rad. It's like these like 55 to like 85-year-old people that are coming in and they want to just learn whether it's like how to change a tire or whether we're learning about e-bikes, but it's like this other cool, empowering, sharing thing that's just about what I love to do, and it's like, if they want to learn, who am I to like not share what I've had as experiences? So yeah, hopefully that answers that one.
Thanks.
One more banger or?
Last question.
Let's hear it.
You have one superpower. What would it be?
Oh, frick, man. We were just talking about this in the shop. It actually took like a good hour of our conversation time yesterday. If I had one superpower, I honestly think I'd have to go with like Wolverine's like healing ability.
Oh, I've not heard that one.
Because it's just like I could just do all the things like if I'm, especially as I get older now, it's like I'm trying to get like back into skateboarding and I'm like, oh, fuck, I really don't want to break my leg again. But if I like just remove that, it's like, and I still had to deal with the pain, so there's still a consequence, but I just like knew that it wasn't gonna like F me for later. Like I'd be like, okay, let's try to figure this out. Let's go, like, whatever it was. I think that would be like my go-to because it would still let me live my life like pretty normal, like the way it is now, but it would just remove like one overarching stressor of like, what happens if I go down and rip my arm off?
Mental anguish is 9.9 times out of 10 so much worse than physical pain.
Totally. And like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I've been there, like with that car accident from grade 11. I've had some injuries like through mountain biking and through skateboarding, and I've done the fucking rehab, and I've done the learning to walk again, and I've done the, trying to stay positive when shit just sucks. And it's like, so if I could just like, and though I'm thankful for all those things because they've helped me in a lot of ways, like they also are just shitty. So I'm like, all right, I've learned enough. I've got the like character building done, check. Like, let's just not deal with that anymore. I can just get rid of it with the superpower. I think that'd be the one that I would pick.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
What about you?
If I had to pick, I'm sure I've answered this question
a few times,
but I'll probably answer it differently right now. Today, if I had to pick a superpower, then I would want to. This is not like really a super. This is just something that I've just like. It's just been plaguing my mind. Is the superpower to be like understand that I want things in the future, but and then to position myself in the moment towards what I want in the future, but not to obsess about what I want in the future. You see what I'm saying? So like. I can, if I like, I'll get caught daydreaming sometimes. Where I'm like, oh man, I really want that. Oh, if I do X, Y, and Z, and then that'll happen. But just like what you were saying, stuff doesn't work out exactly how you think it's gonna work out. So it'd be the superpower to stay present.
Yeah, let things flow over you.
Yeah, let things flow over you, and just like, and I'm getting better at it. I'll catch myself and I'll tell myself what I'm thankful for as like a strategy that I use to like, mindfulness essentially. My mom's a therapist. She's really big on that. But anyways, that's my superpower today.
Yeah, you know what? And I mean, the good news is that's significantly more achievable than my healing superpower.
Yeah.
So that's, a good place to be, right? If you're going to pick one, at least pick one that's possible. So,
that's awesome.
Good shit, man.
Usually my superpowers aren't possible.
Yeah.
That was like the first time.
Flying. Yeah. Like I picked one that's achievable this time.
Yeah.
So maybe by next episode, you'll be there.
Maybe. The process. Is there anything that you'd like to tell the audience before we peace out of here?
Thanks for listening. If you have any questions about anything you've heard, I'm sure there's like a comments or can ask back. And
nobody ever comments.
Okay, well, let's get some comments. Let's throw those on there. Share it wide. Ask. Other than that, if you're in town, if you're in Kamloops or Valemount or Sun Peaks, where we have shops in the summer season, come by and say hi to District. If you're into riding, if you got questions about anything, reach out. I'd love to chat about bikes and everything else. So, man. Well, thank you very much, dude. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was the highlight of my day.
Yeah, it was good times.